Welcome to Swizzle Chill TV. I'm your host, Bryce Shemer, here at Denizens Brewing in Silver Spring, Maryland. We're here to discover the best food, drink, and lifestyle in the DC area.
I'm here with the general manager, Stephanie Nale, to talk about how the magic gets done.
Yeah, so this is our brewery within our tap room that we have here in downtown Silver Spring. And I'm just going to start from the beginning of the brew process itself. So first we need to mill the grain, and grain can be anything. Usually it's you can have oats, you can have barley. In our Southside Rye IPA, we use a little bit of rye in there. So that all has to get done in the mill room, sorry. And then it comes over into this big grist hopper right here. It's the conical machine, and it just sprays all of the grain down into the copper tub, which is our mash tun. And so in the mash tun, all of the grain comes out, water comes out, it all gets mixed up, and it essentially creates the wort. And wort is very sugary liquid, which is the beer before it becomes beer, essentially, right? So this is all in here. Once that's done, it takes a little over an hour, 2 hours, depending on the beer and how much grain is actually being steeped in the water. We pull the liquid, and it goes into the boil kettle right here. All right. So everything ends up coming in here. The grain does get left back in the mash tun, and we pull the grain out and we put it in these large blue bins, and we are able to give that to a local farmer who actually gives it to his cows and his cattle, and they get kind of excited when they see the truck come up with the big blue bins, but we like to be sustainable. We have also used some of the grain in some of our food products. We've done a spent grain toast on our menu before. We don't always do it, but seasonally we like to throw that in there as well. So anyway, so after that's done, we pull the liquid. It goes right over here into our brew kettle. And in the brew kettle is where we add the hops. So essentially we bring it up to a high temperature, pretty much a boil, and then we throw in hops at different times throughout the boil process. Earlier hop addition means a little more bitter and astringent. Later hop addition, a little more aroma, a little more in the mouth. And that's what we favor. That's what we tend to go towards, is that part of it. So even our IPA, not super bitter. It's really nice. You get a little bit of that piney, citrusy flavor to it, but it's not too overwhelming. So,
perfect.
So yeah, so here we've got the wort, we've got it with the hops added, and we need to cool it down so that the yeast can actually start being active in there. And so we have a big glycol chiller we do that with. It goes out, it comes back down to temperature, and then this is where the magic really happens, is actually in the fermenters itself. So we're going to come back around. We have 2 fermenters here, and then a lot more actually in this back area, which is the actual brew house back here. It's where everything happens. So we take a big old keg essentially of yeast, and we pitch the yeast, which is the official term for it. We pitch it down here, and the second that yeast hits the wort inside, it starts becoming beer just like that. Which is pretty fun. And so this will stay in here for about 2 weeks, a little bit longer, just depending on the type of beer. They're always checking it, making sure the gravity's good, that the flavor's coming out properly. And so then when it's done fermenting, when they decide that happens, we bring it over to the bright tank, which is actually right behind you over here. Okay. The name is great because that's what it does. It makes the beer bright. It basically self-filters, so it brings all of the sediment and yeast down to the bottom, so you have a clear beer. We do actually put through a filter 2 of our beers, our Bornbow Czech Pilsner and our third-party triple. So those are always going to be really crystal clear, true to the style, essentially. So after that, we take it and we keg it off. We add a little bit of carbonation. There is some natural carbonation from the CO2 that naturally comes out when the yeast is eating the sugar in the fermenters. But after that, it gets kegged, and we sell it, or we put it in the tap room, and it's ready to go. It's delicious beer.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah, it's
Love
good.
it.
Good
Love
stuff.
Thank you so much for the tour. I had a great time learning about all this stuff.
So thank you for coming by.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I'm here with Julie Verratti, the Business Development Director and co-founder of Denizens Brewing. Can you tell us about Denizens Brewing, your position, and what you do as your role here?
So I'm Julie Verratti. I'm one of the co-founders of Denizens Brewing Company. We opened our doors in July of 2014. I opened the brewery with my brother-in-law, Jeff Ramirez, and my wife, Emily Bruno. And so the role that I play in the company is I run the wholesale part of the company, and I also do business development. So that means I'm out, trying to sell kegs, sell our cans, talking to retail customers. So bars, restaurants, package stores, and I'm also fairly involved in the local business community and do a lot of advocacy work for small businesses and breweries in general. I serve on the board of directors for the Brewers Association of Maryland, as well as the board of directors for the Brewers Association, which is the national trade organization for small and independent breweries.
How did you get started with all this, and what was the vision behind it all?
So, like I said, Jeff is actually our brother-in-law, and Emily and I are married to each other. And so we were at the Ramirez's house doing Christmas dinner with all of our families, and we floated the idea to him to open a brewery in Silver Spring. So I was born and raised in Silver Spring. Emily and I live here now as adults and have sort of started our adult life here together. We both really love beer, love our local community. I homebrewed for a long time and have just always been into the science and the art behind it. I'm actually not very good at making beer, I found, although I love doing it, and it was a really fun hobby to have. But Jeff, the reason we asked him is he had actually been a professional brewer for a number of years, starting out at Iron Hill in the Philadelphia area, and then immediately after that, he was the head brewer at Mountain Sun in Boulder, Colorado. And then, so we kind of picked him and said, hey, man, why don't you come move back out to the East Coast and open this brewery with us?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, I actually went to school out in Colorado, so I'm familiar with it. How did you get Jeff to come back? Like, what was like the big thing that made him leave Colorado with all those breweries there and those microbreweries to come back to the East Coast?
I mean, I think for Jeff, he was born and raised in New Jersey, so he's an East Coast guy anyway. And he, I think, was ready for the next step in his career. So he'd been an apprentice, and then an assistant brewer, and then a head brewer. And I think the natural next step for him was to open his own brewery. And I think we just sort of caught him at a really good time in his life and his career, and he said yes.
So can you tell us about some of the great beers that we have here?
So what we have in front of you right now, I'll start over here on my right, which I'm almost finished with. This is our Southside Rye IPA. Okay. So it's a rye IPA because 15% of the malt bill is actually rye as opposed to malted barley. And so that's actually the minimum amount of rye you can have in a beer in order to call it a rye beer. So that's what this is one of our flagship beers. This is the first beer we ever made. It's called Southside because we are in South Silver Spring. So we wanted to give a little shout out to our neighborhood. This one right here is a current seasonal that we release a couple times a year, usually in the fall as well as the winter. This is our Munich-style dunkel called Junk in the Dunk. And so a dunkel is it's just a dark lager. So it's a German-style lager. It's caramelly, it's bready, it's kind of sweet, but it also has a very clean finish. This is a really easy drinking, nice clean beer to have in the wintertime that's going to warm you up a little bit, especially with those dark malts in there. This last one we have here is our Short Session Double IPA. It's called Short Session because it's 10% alcohol, and so we figure it's going to be a short drinking session if you have this beer. And this is double IPAs are known for being very hop forward, have a lot of citrus, bitterness to it, and so the malt bill in this recipe is pretty simple, because we really wanted the hops to shine. There's definitely a lot of malt character in here, especially when you have a beer that's 10%. You got to use a lot of malt in order to get that type of alcohol, unless you're pumping it full of sugar. And so this definitely, it's malty, it's hoppy, it's got all the things you're looking for if you're looking for a solid double IPA.